This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Schilowitz and Roni Abovitz for This Week in XR. It is June 28th, 2024, and it's the week after AWE. And I'm, by the way, guys, wearing my
Yes, I see you have your Napster shirt on. Very appropriate for this week.
We had the CEO of Napster on. I have to remember his name real quickly. Do you remember his name, Ted?
Geez, Greg something?
Such a nice guy.
He was a good guy, yeah. I feel bad that I'm not remembering.
I know, isn't that embarrassing?
But I have an excuse because I have COVID, so I have brain fog.
John Vlasopoulos.
John, that's it, John.
John Vlasopoulos, really interesting guy. Somehow I can't even remember how I ended up booking him, but a nice guy, and I promised to wear his T-shirt. Unfortunately, not as valuable as it should be because only like 100 people watch the YouTube. Almost everybody listens to the iTunes. So today, great guest. Speaking of guests, great guest today, Tony Parisi, our friend Tony.
Sure.
He's doing all sorts of things, inducted into the AWE Hall of Fame along with Roni. He was a guest on August 19th, 2022.
Wow.
So today is episode 201, so we're really getting on with things.
Was that when he was doing the Lamina 1 stuff? Was that the last time we had him on? Yeah.
And I think that's when we had Neil also.
Yeah.
Neil Stevenson was on also. So let's get to the news. First of all, Roni, congratulations on AWE induction. It is well deserved. And Ted, you got COVID. Scott Stein got COVID. How are you feeling right now?
I'm through the worst of it for sure. But as we were talking, before we started the podcast, the problem with this disease is that when you're initially infected and you are at the most transmissible stage, you're asymptomatic. You don't have the symptoms yet, just like a cold or anything else. It's not when you're all stuffy and people are like, oh, get away from me, you're stuffy and coughing. That's not the max transmission time. It's already past its, core. It's when you have no symptoms that you're transmitting. So while we're all at this big conference together, you just by happenstance didn't end up having lunch with Scott, so you didn't get it, thank God. God knows where I got it. And just, it's just like this never-ending curse that we all have to live with.
And God knows, by the way, where Scott Stein from CNET, who is a fantastic writer and reporter on XR, has been masked up and super cautious. When I saw him in New York just to have lunch, he made us sit outside. It was like freaking December.
Yeah, and you still get
degrees.
It, right? It's like,
and so finally, he hasn't been to AWE or any other conferences. I think he even skipped CES this year. And then he comes to AWE and he gets it.
And he gets it, yeah.
And he was masked up with an N95. He looked like a duck walking around.
Yeah, I do remember seeing him. Yeah, and he still got it. Yeah, so what are you going to do?
So, Ted, any takeaways from AWE? Any 10,000-foot view of what?
I loved it. I sent Ori a note saying I actually think this is one of the best conferences I get to go to every year, and I go to a lot of conferences. And I would say I would imagine you would agree with this, Charlie. We go to these big conferences like CES and NAB and South by Southwest, and I would say the hit-miss ratio for these conferences on like really engaging and good speakers and really on-point topics is like 7-1, 8-1 on the wrong direction. It's like 7 are kind of and 1 is like, that was great. Like, that guy's a good speaker. That woman is fantastic. She nailed it. He nailed it. But at AWE, I would say it's like almost 100%. There's every speaker is relevant, topical, on point, and interesting. And maybe it's just because that's the industry we're so deeply in.
And also, let's be clear, 10% of the people who attend are speakers.
But the conference itself is very well thought out. Like, Sonia does an amazing job of gluing this all together and making everything you step into like this was worth my time. It was valuable to me, and I think a
Yeah,
lot of people
Sonia's
got
great.
that same.
Sonia's amazing, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Uh, yeah, I don't know if you listened to the episode from the stage at South by Southwest, but Sonia, we got Sonia to tell us her personal story, which is quite
Yeah, she bought us a
extraordinary.
cake. They bought us a cake, Rooney. You weren't there to eat the
Oh
cake. It
yeah,
was delicious.
I'm feeling
Andrea Lowry
terrible.
got a cake for us.
You have AWE FOMO.
This was the one I should have gone to. I'm just too buried in the startup, but like Sonia's like, please come. I'm like, I really, really want to this year, but I can't. I'll come, hopefully next year. And she's like, you're gonna miss, and it was true.
Yeah, I mean, this was
Yeah,
a big rock star opportunity that you missed.
it's fun. We had a good time.
So
Yes.
here's a quick question, not to digress too much, because we've got a lot of news to rip through. But Ted, who do you think episode 201 now,
Well,
4
one. Yeah.
years, who was our best guess?
Of all 200?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, since Roni's here and he was a guest a
You
few
know what?
times.
You
Oh
ruined my
no.
punchline. I should have set this up before, but our best guest sits here with us every
It
week.
really is true, Roni. I mean, not to blow too much smoke up your ass, but let me tell you something.
That's
You were
why
a
that's
great
really
guest.
yeah, that's
You
why
were
we
a great guest, and it turned out you would be valuable every week as a guest, and then of course you became the co-host, which is fantastic.
Mediocre host. I feel like this is like we're somewhere between like National Lampoon becoming Saturday Night Live. It's like it's sort of I'm in the what is it? Second City Players joining with you guys. It's been great. Maybe I'm the
Look,
Dan.
a couple weeks ago we had Jerry. I thought she was a great guest. She's super engaging.
Jerry's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
it's truthfully what it comes down to, Charlie, is when we get guests that actually tell authentic stories about their life and their journey, and not some kind of like bullshit marketing layer of who they're
Talking
doing, what they're
points.
working on, and
Well,
all
that's why
this stuff.
guests ask me all the time, well, what should I prepare? Do you have a list of questions? It's like, I don't think you understand. You might have to listen to an episode because you're here to question us too.
Yeah,
We're just having a
yeah.
conversation.
And just be you.
We go where the show takes us.
Yeah. I mean, in a very topical moment last night in the debate, if
No,
Joe
no,
was
no, no,
just
no, no,
Joe,
don't,
I know,
please.
but just give me 1 second.
I
If
still
Joe
have a
was just
hangover.
Joe, if he could have just been Joe, instead of being over prepared and trying so damn hard,
No,
he would have been fine.
no, his
It's just,
voice was weak. His gait was elderly.
I agree,
Joe is
but
not
he's got to lean into that. He is who he is. You can't hide it. It's
Joe.
just a shame.
Let's not
Just a
go
shame.
there. I have too much to say about that, and I don't know who's listening, and they don't tune in to us to
It's
hear
just a
about
shame.
that. It is a very, very concerning situation,
Yeah.
I
but
guess
such
I
as
guess
everything else in the world. So,
could I tie it into augmented virtual reality metaverse for a
Sure. Go ahead, Roni.
um look when you enter the world of augmented reality, virtual reality, and the idea of hacking into reality, um, you know, it seems like the visual and sonic reality are not the only things being hacked. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, it seems like people are using many tools to alter people's perception of reality.
Sure.
Uh, and whether it's outright lies or propaganda, all kinds of stuff. So it's we just in this field, right, that we talk about, there's so many optimistic cool things that you could do, like you talk about at AWE. But the dark side of altering reality is manipulating people, changing their perception of what's true and what's not true. You can't trust anything visual, photo, video, any of that. Like we should at some point do an episode on that, because you're an outside voter and your intermediary layer is all digital, which is totally manipulatable. And
yeah.
this is a problem, right? This
Well,
is
we're
one of
gonna we're gonna
the
we're gonna talk about it today on with one of the news articles about this company Hedra. That we're consumerizing this deep fake thing now, right? It
Yes.
used to be there was a little bit of professional separation.
I had so much fun with Hedra. I took my headshot, the one that has me taking off the 3D glasses.
Yeah.
Actually, Lauren took that picture at SIGGRAPH last year, and it just turned out to be sort of a great moment, even though it's kind of weird and out of focus. And I put that picture into Hedra along with 4 seconds of dialogue, and I chose a voice, a generic voice. Somehow it sounds Indian, I guess, but whatever. And it turned out a picture and a sound, which I said part of the dialogue was, "This is deep fake stuff."
So tell the listeners what Hedra is, now that we've already
So,
jumped
well,
ahead.
Hedra is an AI tool, like many Gen AI tools. It allows you to generate all sorts of images to and add sound and lip sync to images. I keep trying to get it to do a talking dog, but it's not very consistent,
Right.
right? It's the shorter the dialogue, the bigger the chance that it's going to be great. The longer the dialogue, the more the lips start to blur, the more it starts to look obviously fakey. But yes, where this go, and they have a bunch of guardrails, by the way, in fairness, just like all the other image generators. But it is so obvious that, like, if they can build this for fun, someone can build it to do great evil.
Yeah. Well, you guys saw the two tests I did. I did one, it came out super duper creepy. And then I did another one with just a different photo. And it was like, oh God, we are so screwed. Like, this is good. And it's free and it's like instantaneous. And I keep going back to my War Games reference at the
My
end of
my
the movie.
wife posted. I posted it on social media, and my wife commented, "Oh, great! Now I have to go to sleep."
Yeah, I just keep going back to my War Games reference. The only way to win is not to play. And here we all are playing, and
Yikes!
it's going to be scary.
What
So,
happens when we don't know what's true anymore? I
yeah,
mean,
to your
here's the
point, Robbie.
thing: it whether it's a deep fake or not, you question everything
Everything, right?
as
Everything.
right. So it's the threat of deep fakes is as bad as deep fakes themselves, because now you've got someone who can stand on a stage on national television and just say it didn't happen. It's a deep fake.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, it actually asks the question of like our ability to learn as a species, right? Like there are stories like Pandora's box, which are continually appearing every few decades. But it's a story that's true, and we're opening up another one. We opened one with nuclear weapons. We're opening one here with deepfakes and AI, and we're not seemingly able to learn how to how to do these things appropriately.
Avarice and ambition are too powerful. And the human curiosity.
Story of the human race from time memoriam. Yeah.
I mean, that sometimes if you spend your life fighting against something and you lose, you have to conclude that you're fighting against not a problem but reality.
Yeah.
And as Frank Zappa famously said, in a fight between you and the world, take the world.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's rip through some news stories. We've got Tony in the green room. I don't want to keep him waiting. Lots of finance. Oh, by the way, final takeaway about AWE. The initials of the show were MR, not AI. And that one was a bit of a surprise to me. Not that there wasn't AI and there were plenty of panels that talked about it, but if you got down on the show floor and you looked at what people were really doing and exhibiting it, because of the Vision Pro and the Quest 3 and the additional powers that gives to developers, we saw a lot of content in that area, and also good old VR. And even several fully occluded experiences, including one uh, uh, on the Magic Leap 2, which is still, I think the best see-through device ever made. Anyway, so there was a lot of financing news. KGen, which is a video generator, AI video generator, raises 60 million. There's a company out of MIT called Etched, which is going to build chips that compete with NVIDIA chips. I don't think they think they're going to need a lot more than 120 million, but what do I know?
Yeah, but etching as a concept is an important step forward in terms of democratizing the chip manufacturing business and how fabs can spring up in a much more viable way. There's going to be a lot that's going to matter around etching, around quantum computing. It's a space that we all as technologists need to pay attention to, is how silicon gets made and created. So keep a close eye on what we call etching as a business.
97.2 million for Emergence AI. They're building agents to replace white collar workers.
I just can chuckle about that one.
What are they called?
Stability AI gets
Yeah,
rescued by Sean
that's why I
Parker.
thought you were wearing your Napster shirt.
Stability AI for those of you who don't know, is a bit different than other text to image generators in so much as it is an open source platform, which means you can download it and run it locally where it's, probably 5 times as fast as Midjourney or any of the Discord based tools. Um, it doesn't really matter. People tease me, oh, great, you need to save 30 seconds. But of course, if you're generating hundreds of images a day, that 30 seconds becomes very meaningful. So Stability AI is very, very popular, but they did not manage their money well. So out goes the old CEO, in comes Sean Parker, who was a part, not only
Napster.
but also very early in Facebook. Early board member. He put in money very early on and is now a super wealthy investor.
And Charlie, there's a guy named Prem who I know for a number of years from Magically Brothers, but he was basically ran Weta Digital for a while, and then they sold Weta Digital to Unity. So Prem and Sean have formed this team, and it did really well on that sale of Weta Digital to Unity. Not so good for Unity, but now I guess bought maybe in a fire sale Stability.
There's a certain comic rightness to Sean becoming the CEO of Stability from Napster.
He's the exec chairman.
Yeah, but if you understand the relevant point there,
well, exec chairman is another way of saying CEO of the CEO.
Well, but Stability has become sort of the Napster of AI, so it's kind of an interesting touch point that he would become that guy. It's like the apple does not fall far from the tree, I guess.
When we get Tony out, we ought to think about how is this IP issue going to be resolved? I mean, Microsoft's
let me bring Tony in.
Let's thumb into this. There we go.
Yeah, Tony's in addition to being a former Unity executive, he's written books on XR and programming. He is now an entrepreneur. He's also a musician working in art. I'd love to talk to him about that. We're all guitar players. So there's lots of things we can talk about with Tony. Here he is.
There he is.
Morning, gentlemen.
Our friend Tony Parisi, welcome and congratulations again on your induction into the AWE Hall of Fame. We have 2 Hall of Fame members all at the same time. So congrats to both you guys. And we do have a lot to talk about, and we were just getting to, so I don't know, first of all, before we dive in, do we need more Tony introduction?
Because you definitely need to go, we always got to go back to,
we were just about to get into the music labels suing the AI music platforms. So it's a rich topic. I think you probably have some pretty strong opinions about that. So,
but for the listeners, Tony should give us his 2-minute bio. Who is Tony?
Tony is a genuine OG. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Been working in immersive technology and the metaverse since the early 1990s. It's now exactly 30 years since myself and a fellow named Mark Pesci went to the first World Wide Web conference to propose 3D on the internet, back when no one knew what the internet was and no one even had anything better than a 4800 or 9600 baud dial-up modem, if you know what those are. So pretty early to the game, working on some super cool tech that was way too early for the market. But I continue to sort of push on technologies like that, 3D graphics for the internet for years and years, and I've continued to make contributions in that area, including being one of the co-authors of GLTF, which is the international standard for 3D graphics and web and mobile applications, and is arguably being used by everybody. So, 30-year overnight success in that world. Tech entrepreneur. I've started and sold startups. I was an executive at Unity for 6 years, running AR and VR for them. Unity being the predominant game engine for mobile and XR. I'm also and most recently, before I quit the day job last summer, I was an executive at Lamina One, the metaverse blockchain company founded by Neil Stephenson, the fellow who coined the term metaverse. So my career had come full circle. I feel great about those accomplishments, but last year I felt the siren call, if you will, to get back to doing what I loved more than anything in the world, which is music, and I'm doing that pretty much full time. And happy to talk about my music projects as well.
Can you touch on Lamina One before we leave it, and talk about your arc there and what is happening with it now, and what's it doing?
So Lamina One's in a good spot. They launched their mainnet sometime in May this year. like a lot of companies that were in blockchain last year, there was kind of a disaster in fundraising, so things were really slowed down for like everyone for a bit. So I think they're, a little bit behind their ambitions in terms of timing, but they're pushing forward to get their mainnet out. And the goal of that, since it was founded by Neil and is very much staffed by folks who believe in the creator economy, is to try and stay focused on a blockchain that supports digital content creators. Like if you look at the other L1 blockchains, they've evolved to support digital collectibles like NFTs and all of that, but they weren't really designed for that. They were designed for finance mostly, what we call DeFi in the Web3 world. And media, digital media and rich assets were kind of an afterthought there. And Lamina One's kind of taken those full on. So, I'm super hopeful now that mainnet is launched. I was chief product officer there for the kind of year and a half or so I was there. And I believe in the mission. So for me, I just I've moved on to work on my music stuff, but I'm super hopeful about what they're doing, and I joined as their I'm on their first slate of creators. So I just switched over to the other side and said, "Oh, I'll go make some art on this platform now and see how it goes." So
Great.
there you go.
Good for you.
So the topic you came in on was the lawsuit between the music labels and Suno and the other and UDO, the two text to music generators. Have you played with that?
I have played with UDO. Yeah, nice T-shirt, by the way. Thanks for that, Charlie. I don't know if that was intentional or not. You got me going already. I got triggered the second I saw that. So I don't know how deep we want to go into this right away. I've used UDO. I have not used the other one. And I was frankly terrified by how well it cranked out something kind of on first prompt. I mean, the stuff might not win Grammys right away, but it's already in pretty decent shape to be deceptively good as a tool for, making something quick. I actually used it and what's the Luma tool? I forgot what the name of
Luma,
it
yeah.
is.
Luma AI, yep.
Luma AI. I used it to do a little piece
The
of my
Dream Machine,
presentation.
they call
The
it.
Dream Machine, thank you. Yes, I used that to do a little snippet of my presentation at AWE last week. In fact, so I made a little quick clip called. It was telling my personal journey. It's called "Mr. Metaverse Goes to Broadway." So I just had to generate a little trailer, and then I made a soundtrack to it using Udio. So I'm guilty of using these tools as well. There's no doubt about it. And maybe it's one step removed from what I would have done otherwise, which is probably, I might have composed music for that little clip, but I definitely would have stolen graphics or video like we all do and right-click Save As and throw it in my PowerPoint if you're being lazy. At a show like AWE, I probably wouldn't have because they're actually pretty diligent about making sure you're not grabbing copyright material and just throwing it up there. So yeah, really interesting. I like these tools. I am very ambivalent. I mean, I imagine we're all going to get into this. Everyone here being a content creator, everyone here being an artist, everyone here playing music. I think I mean I want to kill it with fire. Not I'm so not into it. And I really would love to hear your guys' opinions, and then I can probably react to that. But I am very, very feeling very much like a Luddite about this one, about
Well,
anything with AI art generation tools.
I could give you a little philosophical start point to start the debate. I think if you go back a little bit historically, there were some of the same concerns about synthesizers, about the concept and idea that you could capture a musical sound and reproduce that on a keyboard or a pad. And you didn't need a French horn player. You didn't need an oboe player. You didn't need a tuba player because those instruments are kind of hard to gather up to do anything other than a big orchestra situation, right? So there's a technological sort of revolution that happens around synthesized music. Initially, it wasn't as good as the true sound. And there were critics saying, I get it, it's synthesized, you can use it for kind of like pre-scoring and pre-vising things, but at the end of the day, you still got to get a real orchestra in to get the real orchestra sound. Then a couple years later, it starts to kind of show that you can still make that argument, but the actual technical argument is no longer made. There's a nuance of having a French horn performer actually perform because of the humanity of it, the mistakes in even the perfection of a really good horn player. and a synthesizer, is going to do it perfectly. But then they were able to figure out how synthesizers could do it slightly imperfectly, right?
Right.
And so you end up with this historical reference point about anything that's synthesized starts out as this very kind of like, oh my God, concern scenario. And then it sort of drops into the economic reality of how everybody uses these tools. And now most music for TV and movies, except for the very, very top upper echelon of giant budget movies, are done in a synthesized environment. So I think that's a good starting point for debate and discussion on this topic now when we sit with AI doing what synthesizers did a generation or two ago.
Well, let me react to that one straight off the bat, and I would love to hear from everyone for sure. So I wrote a musical. It's a rock opera. There's a lot of rock and roll in it, but it's got orchestra. And I and my producer orchestrated all of that music, and that was all done with MIDI. That was all done with synthesizers. Me at a keyboard playing 90% of those parts that I hope a violin and a French horn could actually pull off. They sounded great if you listen to the record. Anyone with a discerning ear will know those were probably virtual instruments. But that was the only way I was going to get this album out for a musical. I mean, I already spent a lot of money. I still hired other singers and session musicians, but there's absolutely no way I would have produced that record otherwise. And someday I hope there will be live orchestra performing a bunch of this. That will be the way that people should experience it live in an ideal situation if this ever comes to a stage. But I'm absolutely into using those tools and all the engineering help tools that myself and the producer used that, years ago would have been unthinkable without hiring a professional audio engineer as well. So your point is really well taken. Though I would also have to then counter and say, is this analogy perfect? Are these just more tools like that, or is there something else going on, which is my big fear, and that's kind of what I want to tear into.
Well, I think there is something different about the power of what we've allowed to happen with what just we call scrape philosophy, right? It is scraping humanity to build a useful dynamic for many creative art forms. So, yes, if you don't have the budget and you don't have the resources, you now have an ability to use the scrape. But the question becomes philosophically and ethically, at what point do we get a little nervous about what we're doing around scraping? Now, synthesizing music and capturing an instrument and dropping it in as a sample is a scrape, right? But it's an individualized, fairly tight ethical curve. When you plug it into AI, you've got a much broader challenge around the scraping philosophy. So, Roni, you've got a thought.
I was going to say, I think, Tony, here's how to separate it out, at least the way I think of it. All these current music AIs, different from this analogy. Like in my studio, I have an amazing Native Instruments module that has Stradivariuses, but I paid for that module, and that module was made under license from a museum in Italy that has the Stradivariuses, and they take care to reproduce them. So when I'm using it, first of all, there's attribution to who created those sounds. And then I get to control them, right? What's happening in these music things are someone else's IP. But this is happening at OpenAI. Microsoft seems to be in favor of this. All these music and video services seem to be ignoring the fact that hundreds and thousands or millions of other people's IP and work is somehow free to use. And now that was Napster. That's what Charlie's wearing. And I think that era, if that era ends, half the problem, sorry about my mic, half the problem will go away. And I wonder, Tony, how much of it is like that? The other half is how much creative control do you have? Like with these big giant AI systems, you type something and it does it all. Like as a musician, I think you want to be the band leader, the orchestra conductor, really control what's happening. Here, you're just typing something and there's no control. It's like a magic 8-ball and something comes out the other end. And like that lack of control is not what artists want. Artists are controlled.
100%. Yeah. Roni, can we come back to that second one? I mean, that is a whole production thing that like we could all tear into, and I 100% agree. But first, I want to pick up on the first point, and I think you're right. I mean, there you go. It's about like the consent of everyone who participated. It's about the compensation of everyone who participated in the creation of those samples and the creation of those virtual sounds. That was a thoughtful, willful thing that happened, including in the performing musicians who probably played those instruments and got paid to do that, right? This other thing is wholesale scraping. It is done with nobody's consent, and it's reflective, I think, of this attitude. I don't know if you saw this thing, this video of Microsoft's AI CEO, Mustafa Suleyman. He said, and I got this up on my screen to get it right, the social contract for content that is on the open web is that it's freeware. Like
Oh, by the way,
100% wrong, 100% BS. Like
Yeah.
you are saying that everything that is put on the web is put out there with Creative Commons
Bubba,
implicitly.
let's
Well,
go there.
there's
Let's go there.
the other thing that is damning and is going to really kill OpenAI in a lawsuit is that they knew they were breaching firewalls in order to scrape content.
Of course. Yeah.
So
Ooh.
even if the argument is correct that everything is free game, surely things that are behind a paywall that belong to companies that they paid to produce is not. And of course, several engineers called attention to this while they were busy doing it.
Yeah.
And their basic attitude is it's too big to fail. They can't stop it. There'll be some solution. And okay, it'll cost us $1 billion. So what's the big deal? The other thing, and of course, they have, there is a variation in the fair use of copyrights legally, which is that you did it for a scientific purpose. And so they're going to argue. And again, clearly you guys don't think it's a good argument, but they're going to argue that it's fair use. It was for science. It was to better science. It is true that we did some bad things, and the people to whom we did bad things, why do you think they're signing up big publishers? Right? Why do you think they're going to end up paying $2 billion to the New York Times?
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Because it refers to your lamina world. Do you think we've now identified the problem well, right? Do you think a potential solve for the problem is one of the beauties of the blockchain? Can every asset that exists in this creative environment called the internet, and everything that's published in this concept of we have access to it, but it doesn't mean that it's all free and people own their IP and their rights to it. It's way too much to try and do this manually, right? To try and prove that, oh, well, he gets paid this for this because of this. But can there be two webs? Can there be the non-blockchain web and the blockchain web? And if you use the blockchain web, automatically, every time you touch a sample, you use an image, you do a creation and ask an AI to help you accomplish it, it automatically triggers a payment structure for those artists and those creators that then just gets automatically billed to your wallet, to your digital wallet through your crypto. Is that finally the real use for blockchain? Is that our solve for this problem?
I think it's a great use for blockchain. In order to solve this problem, it would require everyone participating in that ecosystem to play by the rules.
But can you
The
just
AI
have two?
systems, you could have
not
two,
everybody's
sure.
going to participate. We know that. Humans are bad, right? But if you set up, okay, you want to be in the Wild West and you want to cheat and you want to not be ethical, then you have to go over there. But if you want to be ethical, you come to this part of the web, and everything here is associated with a token on chain and connected. Is that even a realistic possibility? Is it something we could do as humans?
I think so. I'd love to hear from the group on this.
Roni,
I absolutely
what do you
think
think?
so. Technically, yes. Sociologically, yes. Sociologically, yes. Economically, can you make this work so that people are not gonna, we're not gonna have a tragedy of the commons on all this stuff.
Roni, what do you think?
Roni.
Well, two things. One, the U.S. government in this country, and I think in Europe, each is going to have to enforce at probably some Supreme Court level, does IP matter or not? Now, let's just point out the extreme hypocrisy of the statement from Microsoft that Tony read out. Everything is freeware as long as it's not you stealing what they did. Imagine if Microsoft's revenue went to zero and a Google AI wrote perfect copies of Word and PowerPoint and Azure, and it was all free, and Microsoft's market cap dropped to zero. I guarantee you it won't be freeware. So they have to be quite careful. Like, they also live on copyright and trademark and IP protection. So if they want to throw those rocks, they're not like a garage startup that's like, who cares? right? So if you destroy IP copyrights and trademarks for people in music and art, you will ultimately destroy them for software, for tech, for architecture, for engineering. So at some point, the government has got to come in and say these are the rules. And I think that leads to Ted, your question, which is like, does the internet need to have some sort of blockchain tokenization so you can have attribution? Right. And you're no longer counting on like people's good conscience and morals, which is not working. Right. Good conscience, morals, and ethics is not working. So maybe the tokenization and integrating blockchain to the web is one of the only ways to guarantee attribution. Right. So you'll now publish something and it'll be linked. Look, Adobe is a company I love. I've been growing up with like Photoshop and Illustrator and all that like most of my life. But now if you read their EULA, they're like, oh yeah, like all the art you make somehow is going into some big blender. And you're like, wait a minute. I want to revert back to the Adobe that does not have that. I don't want to run an operating system where my work is somehow feeding someone else's brain. This is a huge problem. Now, I think these
But
companies
Adobe has to do it, right, Ronnie? They'll be
what
in an
is
unfair
I mean,
Adobe has
Amazon
to.
and
They'll be in an
Facebook and
unfair
others,
disadvantage if Adobe
YouTube have been
doesn't do
doing
it, right?
this. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
No, I'm just saying, like, if Adobe has to do it because everyone else is doing it. It's not, they'll be an unfair disadvantage if they take some high road, right? Everyone who's doing this has to play by those rules, right?
here's that one more issue, Tony. It'd be great to get your take. Is this a problem of people who think and analyze? And are these companies counting on entire generations of people who don't think, cannot read more than a half-second Twitch video or something, or their TikTok short attention span enabled, so they don't know what's going on anymore? Like, is there an entire generation that these companies are counting on is so unintellectually curious, unable to think and reason in paragraph form, and therefore don't even know what they're signing on a EULA, don't care, so apathetic? Is that like the business model?
Well, yeah, I mean, come on. We met humans? We know this. And I think if you go on Twitter, my, favorite platform to hate, you see it on the daily, and these are people who are they're techies or they're into media. You see them posting about Web3, you see them posting about XR, you see them posting about new technology, and there's the like philosophical accelerationists, and then there's all their stands who just go along when Elon sneezes. It's like genius, right? And it's just like, so I don't expect that to be in any different anywhere. And so of course these big companies are going to count on folks just going along and not asking the questions, but then it's up to other folks who might ask the questions to try to stem some of this tide, I think. So yeah, I mean, it's always been that way. That's human nature, Ronnie.
Tony, can I double click on your musician piece for a second? Because
Yeah.
you've gone all in on being a musician with blockchain. And there was a moment where NFTs, like you could do something in art or music and it had rare value. And then along comes AI spewing a song every half second. What's going on with you in that world, and how are you reconciling this in terms of like a career? How would you tell other musicians right
Yeah, well, yeah. So let's baseline it with this. The reason there's been any movement and folks doing music on Web3 the last 3-ish, 4-ish years is because those folks had their backs against the wall. Any independent musician after COVID, I mean, that was sort of the last straw for them. They were not able to make a living. They had been conditioned to go out and tour and sell T-shirts. That was the only way we were going to make money, because no one's ever going to pay for your music again. Thank you, Napster. Thank you, Spotify, and the streaming services. I mean, if you look at the numbers, they're dismal. You need 1 million streams and you make $3,000 on Spotify. If you just crunch that math, it's just, how do you even get those 1 million streams? You need to be a breakout hit. And even the biggest artists in the world, they don't really make the money off the streaming, right? So COVID comes along and sort of kills all the hope for anybody trying to get started here. And folks began to turn to Web3, seeing some success in digital art. I mean, of course, we had the PFP collections, Bored Apes, all that speculative stuff. But we were also seeing folks collecting fine art, visual art, and saying, I'll pay $200, $3,000 for this piece of art. If I have my crypto, I got my wallet, plop. I own this digital asset. People value that now in some small segment of the world. They're starting to value it more. So the musicians came along and said, let's do that. And a handful of indie musicians have started to carve a path that is successful for them, because what they have done is they've connected to those 1,000 true fans, in Kevin Kelly's words. They found people who'll spend $100 here, $100 there. Whales will spend a few thousand on them yearly to support their career, to get a collectible digital asset. Like we all remember what it was like to buy a rare record, get a Grateful Dead bootleg, whatever it is, to do something, to have something that would have some market value in this digital world. And so they've tapped into that and they started making money on that. I guarantee you the value of anything, and that's why I got into it too. That's why I started really leaning into Web3 to do my own music stuff, which I'm happy to kind of drill into the actual project and why this matters to me. But high level first, the idea that folks are going to put that same value in AI art. I mean, if Beeple comes along and uses an AI tool, they're going to pay a lot of money for that. But that's because he's Beeple. There's a relationship between the collector and the artist. There's a relationship between the musician and the fan and, you know, their supporters. And I don't see people waking up and going like, I mean, there's going to be some breakout. We've seen it before. There's what's her name? Lil Michaela. There's a virtual character on Instagram that's got a couple million followers. People chat to her and ask her for advice. We'll see some phenom like that in AI probably, but I don't think we're going to see a genre where everyone wakes up and goes like, that has the same connection that they would to say Radiohead. Like, you know, they love Tom York, you know, they love Johnny, they love the band, they love the lore, they love the artists. Like the idea you're going to get up and go, you know, Gleekbot 42, the code behind them is amazing. Like, you know, again, we're going to have some freaky folks who do that, and there's going to be a few breakouts, but I don't see that dynamic replacing what's really going on in digital arts and the blockchain, which is folks supporting artists' careers, folks getting some piece and some connection to that artist. Maybe even it's the hope that they'll meet them in person someday. A small collector fan base. A lot of my musician friends are offering that kind of utility. You know, if you're a big enough collector, I'll even do a show in your town, right? I just don't see that relationship with AI. So I'm less concerned about that part of it, like really replacing that tier of up and coming indie artists. I don't see that. I'm much more concerned about the theft issues we've been talking about.
This is a really good conversation today. I hope a lot of people listen to this. Charlie, I know you had something you wanted to bring up. I've got something I want to bring up. You want to go first?
Sure. The one thing I just wanted to get back to the effect on the entertainment business writ large, because there's a convergence of issues here. One of them is that the entertainment business is struggling with change, right? Consumers have moved on, they're spending their time on other screens, right? Their games industry has eaten the entertainment industry.
Yep.
You know, so a lot of that attention, you know, there's just a competition for people's attention. And a lot of that attention has all that social media that people consume came at the expense of television, right? The ad supported broadcast business doesn't work anymore, right? All those cable channels, all those companies that existed off of, you know, their share of the cable revenue don't have that anymore, right? ESPN is crushed by that, right? They have to go to some kind of a subscription model. And even there, they are forced to lower their prices, not to consumers, but their cost of production. So along comes AI, and it is inevitable. And in fact, the president of Sony was just talking about it. It is inevitable that it will be used to produce entertainment at a lower cost. Now, won't eliminate actors, but it will limit them. It won't eliminate writers, but it will limit them. There will be less work to go around. There may be a premium on things that are made without AI for a while, right? They'll coexist. There's also, by the way, two other things, at least in the cinematic world, that I would point out. One is you have AI as special effects, AI as a production tool, right? So the film is still made by humans, human artists, cinematographers, sound people. So lots of humans controlling the AI, just the way they control Houdini and other tools that they use today. The other thing, which is far more concerning to me, is AI just continuously creating content, maybe with you in it, and you just sit there and watch it, maybe do some synthesized music. And that'll be another thing that pulls people away from traditional media and entertainment. Web3, possible solution. I like it for music because it draws the artist together with the consumer, getting rid of the middleman, which is really what the web has always wanted to do. I don't know if it'll work. The level of complexity right now is a real barrier, but I got to believe somebody, maybe Neil Stephenson, will figure out a way that it's just like browsing the web and invisible to the consumer. So
Well,
we'll see. But again, the AI is arriving at a moment where we need solutions, where businesses are, you see what's happening at Paramount today, Ted. Everything they own is dropping in value, and they've suddenly realized it.
of course.
And they
But
can't exploit it fast enough to keep up.
Charlie, you make a really interesting point that we should all comment on. You start to go down the road of asking the question of today, it's a collaboration between artists and technology. But you posed an interesting thesis that is a very dark outcome, which is when we now have the ability to remove the humans and you just ask the machine to make the art and it has a successful outcome, eventually you have no human intervention into the art and into anything. And then you get this dystopian science fiction that still feels like that can never happen, right? Of when the computers get powerful enough, they start to ask the question of why do we actually need these humans to do any of this stuff? And then really bad things happen. And, we can joke about it today in the 2020s. I wonder how many people will be joking about it in the 2040s and 2050s if we continue to go down this road.
I don't know what's going to stop us.
It's a very interesting
What is
philosophical
going to stop
challenge.
us?
This is Permutation City by Greg Egan, if you've ever read it.
Right? It's a real thing, right? I mean, this could
like,
happen.
We're done. It's just the AI doing everything. I mean,
Mhm.
including consuming it, right?
Mhm.
Let me just jump in there for a sec. I mean, this is the question you're posing, Ted. I'm going to illuminate a little. I'm like deeply in this problem that you're bringing up.
Yeah.
I think there's two things. One, I firmly believe there is a form of computing intelligence that we can work with and not have that problem. So I'm not anti the idea of computing intelligence or AI, but I am against the forms of AI that are there today. And I think the only way to stop it is us. We have to make a decision that human beings matter. We have a purpose. This is our planet. We want to be here and we want to have a role. And therefore will shape computing intelligence to be fitting us. I think you have a lot of very well funded companies that are not thinking that way. They're not run by people with an affinity or love for humanity. And I think this is the big problem. Like,
Yeah.
and by the way, the masses of people who are those people that need to have that like fellowship with each other, we have to decide, we don't want what they're offering us. We don't want that future. We want a different future. It can involve computing intelligence, but we will matter. So I think it's like this love of humanity and need for us to matter that we have to collectively say, this is what we're going to do. And there are ways to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be run over by the insane dystopian thoughts of a handful of people who really are misanthropic. They don't love people. They don't actually care about you. They live on an island somewhere and they don't give a crap. And I think,
Well, and I think we've seen. I think we've seen a precursor with this with the commercialization of social media. I think the tale has been told. We have seen what social media does when it is in the hands of a very few people that have massive profit motives and don't really care about their users, their end customers. So we know how this can go, right? And I think we all have to be very careful about this. I think
I would just say one thing to that, making a broad statement like that about social media. I promise you, there are tens of thousands of people at Facebook and YouTube and other social media companies, even X, who do care about the customers. So what you're talking about is the philosophy of Mark Andreessen's of the world, the people who live in a multi-billionaire bubble. But the people who work for them on the ground do care. So I don't want to cast an aspersion over people who are like us and would go to work at a big technology company. And you have a small amount of control. But I think most people there with their little amount of control are trying to do the right thing by the company and by the users. They're just honest, regular working people in the tech business like us. So I don't think there's a big nefarious conspiracy, but I agree with you that there is at the top some mistaken assumptions. And I've
Yeah.
said this before, I'm not convinced social media companies, these are American companies.
Right. It is very possible that
Who
for
owns
us
them?
all,
Who
it's very
owns them? And Mark Zuckerberg, in my opinion, considers himself a world citizen. I don't
Yeah.
think he runs that service to the benefit of the United States at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
And
you
that
know,
doesn't have to do with the little people trying to make sure that users have good experiences.
the four of us next gig could be for one of those tech giants.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right that I think the bulk of those people that are day in, day out working do have a strong human core, do have ethics, and do care. But their challenge is at the very, very upper echelons, those people care less. It doesn't mean they don't care at
No,
all.
the philosophy is
I
wrong.
think they just care less. Yeah.
The philosophy is wrong. And now we're going to a problem of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right, that
Yeah,
started
sure.
in the 80s, where executives were told that their number one loyalty is not to customers, it's not to employees, it's to shareholders. And this is one of the problems that has infected the entertainment business. Oh, we want to increase the stock price because we work for the shareholders. Right? So people talk about what's the problem with the entertainment business? It's trying to be the tech business. So, and this is the problem where the same MBAs are running Rockwell, also run entertainment studios. And again, it's just gravity. That's what the stock market wants. So the market giveth and the market taketh away. But now you talk about movies becoming the same. It's because it's being driven by the market, not the artists.
Charlie, I want to
Yeah.
challenge that, and I want Tony to jump in on this. I would argue the problem is not capitalism. The problem is our ability to put meaningful boundaries on ourselves. You could have you could have capitalism that can operate within an ethical framework, because like there's socialist things that are horrifying, and if billions of people died because these insane people. I think it's like the boundaries we need to put on ourselves and living by that, and also I think above capitalism is power law. Power law is like somehow animals, people, everything always has this tiny head that controls everything. And that's why communism and socialism failed, because power law, nature and physics. There's an alpha in, and a line of prions. Sorry, a pride of lines. There's an alpha in terms of like any group of people. There's always the fastest Olympian, and that power law is like the smartest person tends to do well. That seems to be like natural physics. The issue isn't that either. The issue is like our ability to have some empathy for the rest. Yes, you could be the alpha, but can you care about the others? And I think when you have no empathy, that's when we always get into trouble. Love to hear Tony's take.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, you're both right. I mean, this is a symptom, Charlie's pointed out, of late stage capitalism, but, all the alternatives are worse, in my opinion. So I'm with you on that. And I love the way you framed it, Roni. Maybe this is the challenge in front of us is where do we lay down the boundaries? Like, and are we going to do it? Are we going to actually stand up and do it? Or, like, look at all of us. We'd rather just tinker with our toys, the four of us here on this call. We really would. But we all know that there's also real problems around us right now. We might have to step up. And what is it going to take to get younger people with more energy to step up when they're being, buffeted around by a bunch of like noise and nonsense and misinformation? These are really tough problems to crack. I do feel like there's probably a bit of a thought leadership vacuum here going on, and the people who have the microphone are again these accelerationists on the one hand, and then a lot of people whining on the other hand, and nobody proposing solutions in the middle. So I don't know. I don't know how you crack this one. And again, I guess I'll go back to what I was saying a second ago, which is I'm feeling a little old to jump in and like on the fight myself. I feel like I can lend some wisdom and perspective, but we may need some folks with more energy to carry the torch, to be honest. I mean, that's where
Oh,
I'm
it
at.
is true. I mean, we've all been doing this shit for over 30, 35 years. So, you do get to feel a little bit weary. I'll tell you what I've been feeling. We were referring to the debate from last night, which I really, really do not want to talk about.
Oh God, please don't.
But
And he's going
You know,
there
you
anyway.
start to feel discouraged because you're just one little person. No matter how much influence you have, no matter how big a platform you have, and we all on this call have a platform of varying sizes, but we have some influence, but it's nothing. We're little people. It has to be everyone. And if it's not everyone, you're railing at a windmill. So I'm waiting for everyone. I've been saying this shit. I'm a college professor. I will say this shit to anybody who will listen. But I am waiting. I am there. I will be there, but I am not enough. I am a little tiny ant running away from Godzilla.
I'm trying to find that quote about one person, Charlie. It's very famous. And again, this was my COVID brain that will not allow me. But you guys know the quote I'm talking about that counters that is that I'll need to find it. But
Right, a
it's
single person can make a difference,
thank you.
change everything.
Yes.
And of course, there are many examples of that in
Yes.
history. Um,
Yes.
you know, waiting for Elijah has not worked out that well for the Jews. So, you know, I'm not waiting for that person. I'm waiting for all the little people like us to come together somehow.
Well, you guys are still here, Charlie. Anyway, Ted,
Yes.
Ted, I love your calm in the storm. You have as much passion about this as the three of us, and yet you're the one. You just like, okay, let's just find the rudder. That quote, and it's so important. I've seen you in this
It is
situation
important.
before. You let the people make noise around you, and you're like, okay, guys. So
Yeah.
here we are. I love that, and I love the passion of this conversation. I didn't expect it to go this way. This is awesome. And I kind of think it's great that we started. We've been digging into the arts. I just think it's kind of in miniature the whole situation we're talking about. I think it's about valuing humanity, as Roni's been framing it. I think it's like we're seeing a rapid devaluation of arts and culture. I'm on this thing now, and I spent most of my time at AWE talking about arts, bumping into fellow artists like Estella and a bunch of people. Estella State, great painter, a bunch of people that I hadn't seen in person for a while. And it just kept coming back to this theme, which is, I guess, because I'm looking through this lens right now in my own personal life. But I really feel like we need to look to the arts and artists and those voices to help navigate us through a really challenging time. That, you know, maybe there's a renaissance waiting out the other end of this terrifying era that we're in, by analogy. And you can go back and look at historical analogs to that. They're facile, though. I mean, I'm just hopeful that maybe there's a lesson or two there where we can, you know, use the artists' insights and listen to their voices in a time when we really need all the, you know, all the help we can get in terms of a
Okay.
forum.
I found the quote. It's from Margaret Mead. Here's the quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Wow.
It's such a valuable, like,
Such
Thank you,
she is a
Ted.
wise person.
yeah,
It
it just,
taps for,
gets you right here in the Pixar. Boom,
that's the metaphor for episode 201.
There you go.
There you go. Well,
Quickly
that's all the
a second,
episode, and that's all the episode we have this week. And we always run into this problem, Tony, because we love hanging out and love talking to each other, and we love our guests, and it always ends up on a positive note, even if the subject matter is really challenging. So thank you for bringing that to the show this week. It is always great to hang out with you.
Yeah, back at you, the three of you. Thanks so much. This is a joy.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Ted, Roni, let's do this again next week. Oh, wait,
Yes,
next
indeed.
week we're
Talk soon,
off.
guys.
It's the 5th of July. We're off next week.
Oh, that's right.
Don't
We're
wanna
off
do
next
the
week.
show.
Holiday.
We're off.
Bye, everyone.
We will be back the week after that. I look forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you guys. Good week.